Hello everyone. In this recording, Chapter 5, we are going to talk about a subject called activity-based costing. Well, with activity-based costing, we are discussing a different method of allocating indirect costs, indirect overhead, basically, is what we're talking about here, as opposed to what we learned earlier in the semester in Chapter 4. Okay, so let's just backtrack. Remember, in the manufacturing process, there are three types of costs. We have number 1, direct materials, number 2, direct labor, and number 3, manufacturing overhead. Now, it is real, and once again, the manufacturing overhead, there's a direct piece of that, and there's an indirect piece of that. So, we know in order to apply costs to each unit that we are making, it is really easy to apply the direct costs. So that would be the direct materials, the direct labor, and even the direct manufacturing overhead. The more difficult part to allocate is the indirect overhead. And so what we've learned in the past is we've come up with what we called a predetermined overhead rate. And we use that predetermined overhead rate to apply the indirect overhead to each unit that we are producing. That was a simple method. That is what we learned in Chapter 4 and earlier. And basically what we did is we took our budgeted total costs and we divided it by our total budgeted allocation base, whether that's machine hours, labor hours, whatever. We basically had a choice of figuring out the best way to allocate our indirect overhead. Now in this chapter, what we're going to do, the whole idea of this chapter is to take that predetermined overhead rate and actually break out our indirect expenses a little further, our indirect overhead expenses a little further, and come up with different allocation methods for the different expenses. And the reason for that is because each expense is driven in a different way. In some cases, the cost may be driven by machine hours. In some cases, it may be based on setup hours. It may be based on labor hours on the floor. So each unique expense is going to have a different cost driver. This is called a complex method. Now with these complex methods, once again called activity-based costing, we are going to be able to better accurately apply cost to each unit. All right, so with that said, you can see the slide in front of us. This is what we learned in prior chapters. We come up with a plant-wide overhead rate. It's basically the total estimated overhead for the period divided by the total estimated base. And we would use this one rate to allocate all overhead costs. This was a very simple concept that we learned earlier in the semester. It basically applies the cost evenly throughout the plant. And so here's an example just to give you a refresher of what we learned earlier in the semester. Let's say we have two departments, Department A and Department B. Department A has $300,000 in overhead costs. Department B has $450,000 in overhead costs. And the best cost driver in Department A is direct labor hours. And the best cost driver is machine hours for Department B. So in Department A, if I have 8,000 labor hours, if I take the $300,000 divided by 8,000 labor hours, I am going to get $37.50 per direct labor hour. That would be my allocation base. But Department B, a total of $450,000, we said that the best allocation method was machine hours. So if you take the $450,000 divided by 1,200, you get $375 per machine hour. Now, plant-wide, what is our overhead? It's the total, or $750,000. We have 15,000 labor hours, the total of the two departments, we have 1,950 machine hours. So plant-wide, if we were going to use the direct labor hours, we'd use $50 an hour, which is 750,000 divided by 15,000. Or if we were going to use machine hours, it would be 750,000 divided by 1,950, which would give us the $384.62. Okay, so keep that in mind. What did we do? We used an average. We used a simple average to allocate our overhead costs. Using broad averages to allocate costs, no matter how they're actually incurred, is probably not the best way to allocate costs. You can see here the author's making a little bit of a joke. This is generally known as the peanut butter costing method. Why? Because when you put peanut butter on a bread, it goes on smoothly. All right? But in reality, every product we make is not a smooth process. We can make product A, product B, product C, product D, and they should be allocated in different ways. We have manufacturing process 1, process 2, process 3. It shouldn't be all the same using an average. It's probably not the best way to allocate costs. But if we do allocate using a simple one predetermined overhead rate method, we are going to get some units that are overcosted and some units that are undercosted. All right, so some units that are overcosted, they consume a low level of resources, but they're allocated high costs. So there's too much cost applied to that particular unit. And undercosting is the absolute opposite, where we use a high level of resources to make that certain product, but we allocate a low amount of costs. So this is not good for pricing purposes. We're going to underprice some products and we're going to overprice some products. And that is going to hurt us when we get to our competition. So what we want to do is we want to make sure to figure out a way to better apply costs. All right? If the cost is wrong, so will be the decision about how much we should make, how much we should price it at, to our customers. So certainly this is something we want to look at further with our cost application. All right, so once again, here is our example. Department A has $300,000 in overhead, $8,000 direct labor hours. Department B, $450,000 overhead, and 1,200 machine hours. One particular job, 457, had 1,000 direct labor hours in Department A, as well as Department B, 50 machine hours in Department A, and 75 in Department B. So if we take a look at this example, in Department A, when we were allocating using direct labor hours, we had 1,000 direct labor hours times, if you remember, it was $37.50 per hour, which we calculated earlier as our predetermined rate. So for Department A, we would apply $37,500 in costs using the direct labor hours as our predetermined overhead rate cost driver. With Department B, we were basing it on machine hours. So 75 machine hours in Department B times, if you recall, we calculated our machine hour rate is $375. That's $28,125. If you add the two together, for the total department is $65,625. Now, plant-wide, if you recall, the direct labor hours, which was 2,000 for the total process, times $50 per hour. All right, if you remember, that was our plant-wide rate, or $100,000. And we had 125 machine hours. And remember, our plant-wide machine hour rate was $384.62. All right, so where are we? I mean, the total department is $65,000, but if we were using a plant-wide direct labor hour rate, it would have been $100,000. If we were using machine hours, it would have been $48,000. So what is the best way to allocate costs? Should it be the $65,000? Should it be the $100,000? Should it be the 48,000? You could see the point here. The point is when we break down for Department A and Department B what the better way to allocate costs is, you could see it's better than using just a plant-wide direct labor hour rate or a plant-wide machine hour rate. We were kind of in between when we used our complex method, 65,000. In between if we were using the simple method of direct labor hours or the simple method using machine hours. So this just proves to us that the better we are in breaking down our departments and our processes, the more accurate. Now, we're not going to be perfect. There's no such thing as allocating costs perfectly because they're indirect costs. By nature, it's going to be an inaccurate situation. Okay, so let's take a look at another situation so we can better understand how this works. So in this particular company, the simple costing system, we have $2,385,000 in indirect costs. We also have 39,750 direct manufacturing labor hours. If you do the math, 2,385,000, and I'm going to do it here as well, 2,385,000 divided by 39,750, that works out to $60 per direct manufacturing labor hour. Now, if we were using a simple method, we would basically allocate all of our indirect costs based on this $60 per direct labor hour. But as we've learned, this is not the best way to do it, but this is what it would look like. So we make two products, simple lenses and complex lenses. Now, the direct materials and direct labor, for instance, the simple lenses, the direct materials, very easy to directly correlate that in direct labor. All right, there's no allocation method there. We're simply know that direct materials, 1,125,000, direct labor, 600,000. But the indirect costs is where we're going to have an allocation problem. So with the simple lenses, according to your textbook, it took 30,000 hours to make the simple lenses. Well, the 30,000 times, you guys remember, $60 per hour that we just calculated, there's the 1.8 million. The complex lenses, the direct materials and direct labor were given to us, simple way to apply the costs directly, but the indirect costs is where we needed to use that predetermined rate of $30 per direct labor hour, and according to your textbook, it took 9,750 hours to make the complex lenses. 9,750 times 30 will get you the 585. So using the very simple allocation method, the simple lenses are going to get total cost of $3,525,000. The complex lenses a total of $1,455,000 for a grand total of $4,980,000. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to actually break down our indirect costs a little bit further, and we're going to use what's known as an activity-based costing system. All right, so what we're going to do, first we're going to, let me show you. Okay, so we're going to break down our indirect costs as best as we can. And so when we break down our indirect costs, we see that we have design activity, $450,000, molding machine setup activity, $300,000. So we know our costs in total. Molding machine operations activity, $637,500. Shipment setup activity, $81,000. Distribution activity, $391,500. And administrative costs we know are $255,000. This is where it gets interesting. Instead of using a flat $60 per direct labor hour, we are going to figure out what is the best cost driver. So for design activity, the best cost driver is 100 parts per square foot. 100 parts square foot. So if I have $450,000 and I have 100 parts per square foot, I I have 100 square foot parts. That's $4,500 per square foot. If I have $300,000 in molding machine setup activity and I have 2,000 setup hours, which is the better cost driver, it should be $150 per setup hour. You get my point? Molding machine operations activity, total $637,500, divided by 12,750 molding machine hours, $50 per machine hour. Shipping setup activity, $81,000, divided by 200 shipments. That's $405 per shipment. All right. Distribution activity, $391,500, divided by 67,500 cubic feet delivered, $5.80 per cubic foot delivered. And lastly, administrative activity, $255,000 divided by 39,750 direct labor hours. That's $6.41 per direct labor hour. So when we use the new allocation method, you are going to see, all right, so what are we going to do here? Simple lenses. You remember we had direct materials, 1,125,000. We also had direct labor of 600,000. That's what we saw from our earlier example as well. Now, in addition, we were able to find another direct manufacturing cost, and that is 120,000, direct cleaning and maintenance costs. All right, so we have our direct materials, direct labor, and our direct overhead, let's call it. Now, here are all of our indirect costs. So, for instance, design. We had 30 parts square foot times, if you remember from the previous slide, we used $4,500 per square foot. So if you take 30 times 4,500, we will allocate 135,000 to the simple lenses. Now the complex lenses, it was 70 parts square foot times $4,500. That's the allocation driver. You get 315,000. The setup of molding machines. For the simple lenses, 500 setup hours times 150. That was from the prior slide. The complex lenses, 1,500 setup hours times 150. That's this here, the 150 per setup hour. The machine operations, it was $50 per molding. So 9,000 molding machine hours times 50 is 450,000. For the complex lenses, 3,750 machine hours times 50. You get 187,500. The shipping setup on the prior slide, the shipping setup was, let me see, where is it? Here it is, $405 per shipment. So if we come here, 100 shipments times 405, 40,500. And the complex lenses, the same thing, 100 shipments times 405, 40,500. The distribution, what did we say it was? 580 per cubic foot delivered, 45,000 cubic foot delivered times 580, 261,000 for the simple lenses. For the complex lenses, 22,500 cubic feet delivered times 580 equals $130,500. And last but not least, administration, which we said was $6.41 per direct labor hour. So for the simple lenses, 30,000 direct labor hours times 641 will give you 192,453. The complex lenses, 9,750 direct labor hours. Hopefully you guys remember these direct labor hours from our original example. $6.41 will equal 62,547. So take a look at the bottom line. We are still allocating the same $4,980,000 in costs. So I'm down here in the bottom right. $4,980,000. $2,998,953 went to the simple lenses. The complex lenses, $1,981,047. This is using a complex approach. But if you remember, let me go back so you remember, when we used a simple approach, what did we do? For the simple lenses, it was $3,525,000. The complex lenses, $1,455,000. The same $4,980,000, but certainly allocated differently. All right? You can see less costs were allocated to the simple lenses and more costs were allocated to the complex lenses using an activity-based costing system. Same $4,980,000. I can't lose sight of that fact. We are just allocating the costs differently. And we saw that the simple lenses were overcosted originally, and the complex lenses were undercosted. And that's going to cause a problem. Let's compare the two. With the simple costing method, we had two direct cost categories, direct materials and direct labor. With the activity-based costing system, we had the direct materials and the direct labor, but we also found direct overhead. All right? So you can see the direct cost pool was a little bit higher, $270,000 higher, activity-based costing versus the simple costing system. Now the indirect cost pools, remember with the simple costing method, we simply allocated all of our indirect costs using direct labor hours. But with the activity-based costing system, we came up with different cost drivers for different expenses. All right, and so we're using the simple costing method, we allocated $2,385,000 in indirect costs. With the activity-based costing system, only $2,115,000. The difference is $270,000. That's because the $270,000 was the direct manufacturing overhead that we see up here that was directly allocated. And when we use the simple costing method, we assigned $3,525,000 to the simple lenses, $1,455,000 to the complex lenses, as opposed to the activity-based costing system. You see it was much different. The simple lenses were overcosted and the complex lenses were undercosted. These are problems. When we have an overcosting situation, our prices are going to be too high and our competitors are going to blow us away. And when our costs are undercosted, our prices might be too low and we might be actually losing money. So we need to be very careful with this. ABC, activity-based costing, is generally perceived to produce superior costing figures, more accurate. But once again, nothing, because we're dealing with indirect costs, nothing is going to guarantee accurate costs. All right? So we need to be very careful. It is certainly a better method to allocate costs, but it's not an absolute. All right? It's generally considered to be more accurate. It is also more costly to implement. You saw how much more time it took to do the activity-based costing versus the simple costing. It's a lot of extra work in that accounting department. But it's a good way to refine their costing system. It is a good way to get more competitive with your competition and to make sure your pricing is appropriate. All right. How can activity-based costing implementation help a company? All right. Significant amounts of indirect costs are allocated only using one or two cost pools. That's not good, right? We're not getting specific enough. All right. We want to make sure that because we have different processes to make the products, there are more diverse demands on resources because of the volume, the process steps. It's more complex now, manufacturing, than it ever was. In the past, when it was more simple, using one cost driver to allocate indirect costs actually worked pretty well. But now that manufacturing is getting more technology and it's getting more complex, an activity-based costing system where we have different cost drivers to allocate different indirect costs, it's a lot better. It's more well-suited for companies now. So we want to make sure we do this. And this is not only for pricing, how much we should sell our products for, but also marketing decisions and manufacturing decisions. Certainly ABC implementation will help us at the end of the day. All right, and it's not once again, I need to keep saying it's not perfect, but certainly it is a better way to allocate costs. You're getting a little bit closer to the truth. And when we use an activity-based costing system, the method of management decision-making when this is implemented is called activity-based management. Activity-based management includes decisions about the pricing and the product mix, cost reductions, process improvement, product and process design. Certainly, if we allocate cost in an activity-based costing manner, we should be able to better manage all of these decisions.